I, 25F, have been going through a difficult situation with my sister Bianca, 28F, and my parents. I need to give some background to explain how we got here. Our family wasn't very well off when we were growing up. My dad worked as a mechanic at a local auto repair shop and my mom was a stay-at-home mom. We lived in a small rented house in a not-so-great neighborhood, but we made it work. Dad always worked overtime to make sure we had enough money for basic necessities and occasional treats. Despite our financial struggles, we were a close-knit family and looked out for each other. Things changed drastically when I was 16 and Bianca was 19. Dad was working late one night at the shop when a car lift malfunctioned and fell on him. The accident left him partially paralyzed from the waist down. The insurance money barely covered the initial hospital stay, and we had to pay a lot for his ongoing medical bills and rehabilitation. The accident completely destroyed our family's financial stability. Bianca was in her first year of college at that time, studying psychology. She had gotten a partial scholarship and was really passionate about becoming a therapist. But after Dad's accident, she had to drop out to help with his medical expenses. She started working at various places, first at a coffee shop, then at a retail store, and later at a call center. But she couldn't seem to hold on to any job for more than a few months. She would either get fired for being late or quit because she couldn't handle the stress. I think dropping out of college really affected her mental health. I was still in high school when all this happened, but I started working part-time at a local diner to help out. I would go to school in the morning, work evening shifts at the diner, and then stay up late to finish my homework. It was exhausting, but I knew I had to help my family. Mom also had to start working as a cashier at a grocery store since Dad couldn't work anymore. The next few years were really tough. Dad needed constant care and physical therapy. The medical bills kept piling up, and we were barely making ends meet. Bianca's situation wasn't helping either. She would get jobs but then lose them quickly. She started having anxiety attacks and would often spend days in bed, too depressed to get up. Mom and Dad were really worried about her, especially since she had given up her dreams of becoming a therapist to help the family. When I turned 18, I got a full-time job at a retail store while continuing my evening shifts at the diner. I was working almost 70 hours a week, but I started saving every penny I could. I lived very frugally, didn't buy new clothes, didn't go out with friends, and packed my own lunch every day. My plan was to save enough money to help Bianca go back to college since I could see how much dropping out had affected her. By the time I was 21, I had saved up enough money to buy a small apartment. It wasn't in the best neighborhood, but it was clean and safe. Instead of putting it in my name, I decided to put it in Bianca's name. I thought having her own place would boost her confidence and help her get back on her feet. She had been living with our parents all this time, and I could see how being dependent on them was making her feel worse about herself. When I told Bianca about the apartment, she cried and hugged me. She promised she would get a stable job and make me proud. She seemed genuinely happy for the first time in years. I moved in with her, and we agreed to split the utilities and groceries. Of course, I ended up paying for most things since she wasn't making much money, but I didn't mind. I was just happy to see her doing better. For the first year, things were actually looking up. Bianca got a job as a receptionist at a corporate office and seemed to be more stable. She was getting up on time, taking care of herself, and even started talking about maybe going back to school part-time. I felt like I had made the right decision in helping her. Then she met Will, 32M, at her workplace. He was a sales manager there, and according to Bianca, he started flirting with her almost immediately. He would bring her coffee every morning and stop by her desk to chat. Eventually, he asked her out, and she was over the moon. Will seemed nice enough at first. He would bring her flowers, take her out to nice restaurants, and buy her small gifts. I was happy for her because she seemed excited about life again. But within a few months, things started changing. Will started staying over more and more often without really asking me. He would make comments about how small our apartment was and how Bianca deserved to live somewhere better. He would criticize everything from our furniture to the neighborhood we lived in. At first, he would say these things jokingly, but gradually his comments became more direct and mean. Bianca started changing too. She began spending all her money on expensive clothes and makeup because Will liked his women to look classy. She would skip work to go on shopping trips with him or to fancy lunches. When I tried to talk to her about her spending habits or her attendance at work, she would get defensive and say I was jealous because I didn't have a boyfriend and worked all the time. I was still working 2 jobs at this point. I would work at the retail store during the day and pick up evening shifts at a different diner since my old one had closed down. I was trying to save money again since I had used all my previous savings on the apartment. I wanted to take some classes at the community college, but between paying for most of our living expenses and helping with Dad's ongoing medical bills, I could barely save anything. Will basically moved in without anyone asking me how I felt about it. He would use our utilities, eat our food, and never contributed a single penny. He would have his friends over for drinks late at night, even though he knew I had to wake up early for work. He would make snide comments about how I was always working and never had time for fun, saying things like life is about more than just working yourself to death. I tried talking to our parents about the situation, but they were just happy that Bianca seemed happy. Mom would say things like Will has a good job and he really loves her, or at least she's not depressed anymore. They didn't see or didn't want to see how Will was manipulating her or taking advantage of our situation. That's where things stand now. I feel like I'm going crazy because no one else seems to see what's happening. I've sacrificed everything to help my sister, and now I'm watching her throw it all away for a man who clearly doesn't have her best interests at heart. Am I wrong for feeling this way? Should I just keep my mouth shut and let her make her own mistakes? Edit. Thank you everyone for your responses. A lot of you have asked why I put the apartment in Bianca's name. I really thought it would help her mental health and give her something to be proud of. I know now that it was a mistake, but I was just trying to help my sister. Update 1. It's been about 3 weeks since my original post, and things have taken a turn for the worse. I've been trying to handle the situation calmly, but last night everything exploded. I came home from my evening shift at the diner around 11 p.m., exhausted after a 14-hour workday. Will and Bianca were sitting in the living room waiting for me. I knew something was wrong because they usually never waited up for me. Will had this smug look on his face that made my stomach turn. Bianca started by saying they needed to talk to me about something important. Then she dropped the bomb. They wanted me to move out of the apartment. According to them, 3 people living there was too crowded, and they needed their privacy. Will chimed in saying that at their age, couples needed their own space to grow together. I stood there in shock for a minute, still in my work uniform, trying to process what they were saying. When I finally found my voice, I reminded Bianca that I had bought the apartment with my own money. I told her how I had worked 2 jobs for years, saving every penny while she was struggling to keep even one job. I reminded her that I still paid most of the bills and utilities. Bianca's response felt like a slap in the face. She said since the apartment was legally in her name, she had the right to decide who lived there. Will was nodding along, adding that I should be grateful they were giving me notice instead of just changing the locks. He even had the nerve to say that I should understand since I was always talking about wanting to go to college, as if they were doing me a favor by kicking me out. I called our parents immediately, my hands shaking as I dialed the number. I really thought they would see how wrong this was. But I was in for another shock. Mom answered the phone, and after I explained what was happening, she sided with Bianca. She said that since Bianca was older and the apartment was legally hers, she had the right to make these decisions. She suggested I could move back in with them temporarily, as if that would solve everything. Dad got on the phone too, saying that Bianca and Will were a couple now and needed their space. He told me I was being immature by not understanding this. When I brought up the fact that I had bought the apartment, he said what's done is done and the apartment belongs to Bianca now. I hung up the phone and looked around the apartment I had sacrificed everything for. The furniture I had bought piece by piece from my savings. The small bookshelf where I kept all my community college brochures and the money jar where I had been saving up for classes. It all felt like a cruel joke now. I went to my room and started packing my things. Tears were running down my face, but I refused to let them see me cry. Bianca just stood in the doorway with Will, watching me pack. Will even started talking about how they were going to turn my room into a home office, and asked if I could leave my bookshelf since it would go to waste in a temporary living situation. I called my friend Sarah, who immediately offered to come pick me up. While I was waiting for her, Will's friends showed up for what they called a housewarming party. They were already planning to celebrate before I had even left. I could hear them laughing and talking about decoration plans while I sat in my room surrounded by hastily packed boxes. Sarah arrived around midnight with her boyfriend to help move my things. As we were carrying my boxes out, one of Will's friends made a comment about how nice it was that I was finally moving on with my life. I had to stop Sarah from saying something to him because I just wanted to get out of there as quickly as possible. I've blocked all of them on my phone and social media. But that hasn't stopped the messages from coming through other channels. Several of our relatives have reached out to tell me I'm being dramatic and that I should understand that Bianca and Will need their space as a couple. Our aunt even sent me a long message about how when she was young, she had to make sacrifices for her siblings too, completely missing the point that I had already sacrificed everything. Sarah has been amazing through all of this. She helped me move my things into her spare room, and has been helping me look for affordable apartments in the area. She even offered to be my roommate to help with the rent. We found a few possible places, but they're all in pretty rough neighborhoods since that's all I can afford right now. The hardest part is realizing how stupid I was to trust Bianca. I kept thinking about all the extra shifts I worked, all the times I skipped lunch to save money, all the nights I stayed up late doing inventory at the store for extra pay, All of it went into that apartment that I'll never see again. I'm staying with Sarah for now, sleeping on an air mattress in her spare room. I had to ask my manager at the diner for more shifts to start saving up for a new place. At least work keeps me busy and stops me from thinking too much about everything. This morning, Mom tried to call from a different number, probably to tell me again how I should understand Bianca's position. I didn't pick up. I'm done being the family doormat. From now on, I'm focusing on myself and my future. I've learned my lesson about trying to help people who don't appreciate it. Some of you asked for an update in the comments of my original post, so here it is. I know it's not a happy update, but at least now I know where I stand with my family. I guess sometimes the worst things teach us the most important lessons. Update 2, it's been 6 months since I moved out. A lot has changed since then. Sarah and I found a small 2-bedroom apartment in an older building. It's not fancy, but it's ours, and more importantly, both our names are on the lease. I picked up a third job working weekend shifts at a convenience store to make ends meet. Between 3 jobs, I barely have time to think about what happened, which is probably for the best. Yesterday, something unexpected happened. I was working my shift at the retail store, arranging a new display, when I heard someone calling my name. I turned around to find my mom standing there, tears streaming down her face. She looked older somehow, more tired than I remembered. At first, I thought something had happened to Dad, but then she started talking about Bianca. Apparently, Will left her 3 weeks ago. But that wasn't even the worst part. Mom then revealed that about 4 months ago, Will had convinced Bianca to transfer the apartment to his name. He had told her it was because he wanted to take care of everything and that it would be easier for him to handle the bills and paperwork since he knew about these things. Bianca, being as naive as ever, agreed without even telling our parents. Now Will was living in my apartment with another woman, his supposed work colleague who he'd been seeing for months behind Bianca's back. He kicked Bianca out with just a backpack of clothes, telling her she had an hour to get her things and leave. Mom was crying harder now, causing a scene in the middle of the store. My manager was giving me concerned looks, so I had to take my break early and move this conversation to the break room. There, Mom begged me to help Bianca get the apartment back. She said Bianca was devastated and had nowhere to go. She's currently living in my old room at our parents' house and can barely get out of bed. According to Mom, she's lost her job because she stopped showing up after Will kicked her out. Mom kept saying I was Bianca's only hope since I had paid for the apartment originally. She thought maybe I could talk to Will or help pay for a lawyer. She even suggested I could let Bianca stay with me and Sarah until they figured something out. I couldn't help it, I laughed. It wasn't even a happy laugh, just a bitter one. I asked Mom where this concern was when Bianca and Will kicked me out of my own apartment. I reminded her how they all turned their backs on me when I needed them. Where was all this family loyalty when I was sleeping on an air mattress in Sarah's spare room? Mom started crying harder and said I was being cruel. She said Bianca was family and we needed to help her. She tried to guilt me by bringing up Dad, saying he raised us to look out for each other. That's when I snapped. I told her that they stopped being my family the day they kicked me out of the apartment that I bought with years of my hard work. After Mom left, my phone started blowing up with messages. My aunt called to say I was being heartless. My cousin sent messages saying I should help my sister because family is family. Dad even called, which he hasn't done since I moved out, to say he was disappointed in me. He said he thought he had raised better daughters than this. I blocked all their numbers again. Sarah supported my decision, saying they only remembered I was family when they needed something from me. Even my roommate from the old building, who still lives there, texted me to say Will moved in his new girlfriend the same day he kicked Bianca out. Apparently, she drives a fancy car and works at his company too. The irony of the situation isn't lost on me. Bianca chose Will over me, and then he did the same thing to her that she did to me. I know some people might think I'm being petty or vindictive, but I call it karma. They made their choice when they decided to throw me out, and now they have to live with the consequences. My break was ending, so I had to go back to work. As I watched Mom leave the store, still crying, I felt nothing. 6 months ago, seeing her cry would have broken my heart. But now? They lost the right to my sympathy when they chose Bianca and Will over me. Sometimes the hardest lesson to learn is that you can't always count on family. Update 3, it's been almost a year since everything happened, and my life has completely changed. I quit my jobs at the diner and convenience store because I got promoted to assistant manager at the retail store. The pay is much better, and the hours are more reasonable. I'm finally able to take evening classes at the community college, just 2 classes per semester, but it's a start. Sarah and I moved to a better apartment in a nicer neighborhood 3 months ago. It's still nothing fancy, but it's in a safer area and has a small balcony where we put some plants. We even adopted a cat together. It's nice to come home to a place that actually feels like home. Through mutual friends and social media, I've heard bits and pieces about my family. Bianca tried to sue Will for the apartment, but since everything was legally in his name and she had willingly signed over the property, there was nothing she could do. The lawyer apparently told her it would be a waste of money to pursue it. Will is now engaged to the woman he left Bianca for. Someone who still works at their company told me she's actually the owner's daughter, and Will had been dating her for months before he kicked Bianca out. They're planning a big wedding next spring. They completely renovated my old apartment, tore down walls, put in new floors, the works. It's like my years of hard work never existed. Bianca is still living with our parents. She finally got another job, working as a cashier at a supermarket, but she's apparently still depressed. Mom posts things on social media about staying strong through hard times and family being everything. The irony would be funny if it wasn't so sad. Last week, I ran into Jennifer, our old neighbor from when I lived with Bianca. She tried to guilt-trip me, saying Bianca asks about me all the time and misses me. She said my parents keep my graduation photo on their mantle and talk about me to anyone who'll listen. But it's too little, too late. My new co-workers and friends don't know this story. To them, I'm just a normal 25-year-old trying to build a life and get an education. It's refreshing to be around people who don't see me as the family ATM or the responsible one who needs to fix everyone's problems. Sometimes I think about reaching out, especially on Dad's birthday or during holidays. But then I remember how they all stood there watching me pack my things that night, how none of them helped me carry my boxes, how they celebrated my departure with a housewarming party. Those memories are enough to stop me from picking up the phone. I know some people in the comments of my last update thought I was being harsh, saying I should be the bigger person and help Bianca since she's clearly hit rock bottom. But I learned the hard way that being the bigger person usually means being the bigger doormat. I'm finally building the life I always wanted, taking classes, saving money, making real friends who actually care about me. Sarah says I've changed a lot in the past year. I'm more confident, more focused on my own goals. She's right. Losing my family hurt, but it also freed me from the responsibility of always having to save everyone else while sacrificing myself. To everyone who supported me through my previous posts, thank you. You helped me stay strong when I doubted myself. And to anyone else going through something similar, sometimes the family-first mentality is what keeps us trapped in toxic situations. It's okay to put yourself first. It's okay to walk away.